Think back for a moment. Can you still, like, really remember the 80s or the 90s? I don't just mean the clothes or the songs, but that specific feel of the decade.
Yeah, that definite vibe they had.
Exactly. Now, what about the 2010s? Do they feel quite as sharp, as solid as those times?
It's different, isn't it? Maybe. Blurrier, less distinct somehow.
Right. It really makes you wonder, have decades, is these clear cultural signposts, have they started to kind of dissolve? So today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that. This really fascinating idea how our whole perception of time, even the concept of a decade, seems to be losing its shape.
That's right. And for this deep dive, we're mainly looking at Peter Principi's work, specifically the vanishing of the decade and the decorpification of time. These are really insightful sources. They pull in ideas from thinkers like Jean Baudrillard, Zygmunt Bauman, Erich Fromm, to really get under the skin of this shift.
Okay, so our mission here is to unpack how this algorithmic matrix the sources talk about, how it's sort of broken our linear sense of time, how it's dissolved the whole structure of the decade, and what that actually means for us living in what they call this eternal present.
Hmm.
So maybe let's set the scene first. There was a time, right, when decades felt like these solid, recognizable landmarks. What was it that gave them that identity, that solidness we seem to be missing?
Well, the sources describe them as more than just time periods. They call them symbolic containers, even mythologies in miniature.
Right.
They were like these powerful shared identities. They shaped everything, how people dressed, talked, even what they dreamed about.
Right.
Like, think about the 1920s. You had this real buzz of vibrant modernity, cabaret, silent movies. They were actually changing people's habits, their looks.
And the 30s, too, even with the global crisis, popular culture just exploded everywhere.
Exactly. And then you jump to the 60s.
Oh, yeah, the 60s.
Yeah.
Instantly, you think sexual revolution, that feeling of a future coming. JFK, LSD, miniskirts, landing on the moon.
Totally. You could almost feel the change happening.
Felt like things were moving.
And even the 90s, especially the earlier part, had this very physical feel, this embodied sense of time. The sources mentioned people's bodies moving, in backyards, on streets, sweat on their faces and T-shirts stretched out, building connections without words, just through movement, jumping, running, waiting together.
A tangible kind of shared experience.
Very tangible. And this actually connects to something Jean Baudrillard wrote back in '81 in Simulacra and Simulation. He talked about history having retreated, leaving behind what he called an indifferent nebula.
An indifferent nebula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he suggested this might lead to a kind of longing for a past when at least there was history, at least there was violence, when at least life and death were at stake, a time when things felt more real, perhaps.
That's a powerful idea, history retreating like that. How does that connect back to this feeling we have now that recent decades are blurrier? Is he saying we've lost the story, the narrative of time?
That seems to be exactly it. When events lose their specific weight, their context, they just become part of this undefined cloud, this nebula. And our sources pinpoint a specific moment where this flow, this kind of clear progression of history, seems to really fracture.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. What moment was that? The source calls it a perceptual rupture.
September 11th, 2001, that's the moment they identify, a perceptual rupture. Because it wasn't just a huge event, it effectively hit the pause button on the past century.
The pause button.
Yeah, think about the image of the Twin Towers. The source calls them a plastic symbol of interruption. Literally two parallel bars, like the pause symbol on a remote control, right? Standing against the timeline.
Oh, I never thought of it like that, the pause symbol.
And it wasn't just symbolic.
Yeah.
Apparently, MTV, right around then, ran this short ad where the screen just froze on those two vertical lines. Total silence. Suspension.
So that MTV thing wasn't just clever marketing. It actually tapped into how the world felt paused. How did that kind of existential stop change how we saw time afterwards?
Well, it shattered the illusion of time just moving forward, unstoppably. And from there, the source argues, we entered the age of the loop, where each year can be remixed, suspended, archived, or rewritten as a media file.
Like digital files.
Exactly. And this whole period, late 90s into the early 2000s, was also soaked in this obsession with control and terror over uncertainty. Think about Y2K fears, then 9/11 itself, the explosion of surveillance cameras, all the media images of war after the invasions, Afghanistan, Iraq. It all fed into this feeling of being kind of stuck, looping through these anxieties.
Okay, that sets up the next big shift, the digital revolution, which really takes off around 2005. How did that change our day-to-day experience of time?
That was the real revolution, according to the source. Around 2005, 2006, blogs, YouTube, Facebook taking off. And since then, it feels like each year has lost its own form. There are no clear boundaries.
Yeah.
I mean, what really makes 2010 feel different from, say, 2017? Or 2008 from 2015? The source kind of provocatively suggests there's nothing but an updated algorithm separating them.
Wow. So pop culture doesn't define decades anymore.
It seems less like it defines them and more like it's become this endless playlist. You can genuinely be goth, Y2K, cottagecore, and punk on the same day. Mix and match aesthetics from any time.
It definitely feels like time stopped layering. Is that what they mean by endless playlist? Like every past style is just available all at once. It kills that sense of progression.
That's exactly the insight, yeah. No buildup, no distinct layers. Everything's just a searchable file on this constant loop.
And any nod to the past just feels like, as the source says, dreamlike nostalgia, or maybe just a TikTok aesthetic.
Right, just another option on the menu. But the sources dig even deeper. They talk about something really subtle, but maybe profound, but how we feel time just through the numbers, the years themselves.
Numbers, how so? This sounds fascinating. They call it numerical density.
Yeah, numerical density. It contrasts how we perceive years before and after 2000.
Okay, lay it out for us. What's the difference?
So pre-2000 years. Think 1984 or 1995. The source describes these as dense, full-bodied, heavy digits. Visually, they look fuller, right? And phonetically, saying 1994. It has this structured rhythm, a sonorous gravity.
Huh. 1994.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does have a weight to it.
Yeah.
An embodied rhythm.
Exactly. The numbers themselves felt like they carried history. But then 2000 arrived.
And how did that specific number change things, just by sounding different?
Well, the source describes 2000 as an optical and phonetic whole.
A whole.
Yeah. It's short, dry, aseptic, almost like a post-human code. That 1000 part feels vague, neutral, abstract. Even saying 2020 is described as a mechanical expression without flesh. It just doesn't have that same heft.
That's actually really perceptive when you think about it. 2000 versus 1999.
And the core idea here, the really striking point the source makes, is that the year 2000 did not open an era. It probably dissolved it.
Dissolved it. Whoa.
Dematerializing it into an eternal present with no decade nor edge or pillar to rest on.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just flipping the calendar. It was maybe the moment our experience of time fundamentally shifted from that structured, linear feel to this more fluid, eternal present, a kind of rewiring of how we perceive reality.
That's a huge statement. That 2000 didn't start something new, but maybe ended something or dissolved it. It really makes you think about those bigger philosophical ideas about modern life.
Yeah.
How do thinkers like Bauman and Fromm fit into this?
Oh, their ideas connect perfectly. Zygmunt Bauman's concept of liquid modernity, for instance. He described modern life as being all about fragility, temporariness, vulnerability, and inclination to constant change, constant flux.
Liquid modernity, yeah.
Bauman argued that to be modern means to modernize compulsively, obsessively, not just being, but always becoming, never finishing, always staying underdefined.
Always becoming, avoiding completion.
Exactly. And that constant state of flux, that liquidity, it mirrors this idea of dissolved decades perfectly, an eternal present where nothing really settles or solidifies.
And Erich Fromm. He wrote The Art of Loving way back in 1956. How does he connect?
Fromm's observations are almost startlingly relevant nearly a century later. He described modern people as resembling characters in Huxley's Brave New World.
How so?
Well-fed, sexually satisfied, but, and this is the key part, without self, focused purely on having fun through constant consumption, guided by slogans like, when the individual feels, the community reels, or everybody is happy nowadays. He saw this focus on external fun over developing an internal self.
Wow. Without self.
Yeah. And if people are without self, if they're always becoming instead of being, constantly chasing the next consumption high, well, it makes sense that distinct decades would fade, doesn't it? Decades need some collective identity, some historical grounding. If the self is unstable, it's much harder to experience and mark time in that kind of cohesive, shared way.
That makes a lot of sense. And if we fast forward again to just the last few years, we had another massive shock, another perceptual reset that really changed our sense of time.
Absolutely. The COVID-19 pandemic, roughly 2020 to 2022, the source calls this the second perceptual reset since 9/11. Society was suddenly frozen, but frozen in the endless stream of obligatory virtuality. Remember, Empty streets and a full screen.
Oh, definitely. Empty streets, full screen, that captures it.
And now our daily life is so deeply shaped by these algorithmic flows. They dissolve time into what the source calls a new invisible ecosystem. Our memories overlap in a map of data, and every second leaves digital traces before it even becomes memory. It's recorded before we even process it properly.
Wow. Digital traces before memory.
And this leads to what the source terms the decorpification of time.
Decorpification of time. That
Yeah.
sounds intense. Does that mean time itself is losing its body, its physical feeling? Like how we outsource our memories to devices?
That's exactly the idea. Just like the decade lost its solid shape, the argument is that we might too, our bodies might too, by often storing information externally in our devices.
We're offloading our experience.
Yeah, and it's not just the storage, it's the algorithm that has interpenetrated us. It punctuates our day with notifications, interactions, sensory triggers, endless data streams. Our own subjective feeling of time passing gets mediated, pulled away from just our physical bodily experience.
So if our sense of time is already so digitally tangled,
Yes.
so decorpified, what's next?
Especially with AI advancing so fast.
Well, putting aside unpredictable events, the source predicts a possible third phase. This would be the materic entry of AI.
Materic entry, meaning AI becomes physical.
Yeah, moving beyond just screens, entering a cognitive era where our perception gets intertwined with predictive flows shared among neural networks, connected bodies, and sentient intelligences. It suggests a future where the boundaries between our biological experience and the algorithmic fabric just dissolve.
Yeah.
AI wouldn't just be a tool we use, it would be woven into the environment, into us, shaping reality itself. That is, yeah, that's a mind-bending thought. The line's blurring completely. And speaking of things shaping reality, there was one other interesting historical detail mentioned in a footnote in the source material.
Ah, yes. Just as a side note, the source does mention that some analysis suggests many cultural movements in the last century were largely influenced, if not orchestrated, by Western intelligence strategies. It points to studies like Francis Stoner Saunders' book, Who Paid the Piper, about alleged CIA funding for certain cultural projects, and also mentions programs like the FBI's COINTELPRO or the CIA's Operation CAOS.
Okay.
So the source includes this information just neutrally, pointing out that how we perceive past eras, even their cultural distinctiveness, might also have been shaped by forces we weren't always aware of. Just another layer to consider.
Right, just presented as information from the source. So, okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've journeyed through this really profound idea that time, which maybe once felt clearly marked out by decades, has become something else, this continuous algorithm-driven flow.
Yeah, influenced by huge events like 9/11 and the pandemic, but also by digital tech, philosophical shifts.
And this concept of decorpification.
Well, right. So connecting this all back, how does this decorpification, this dissolving of time structure, how does it actually impact your daily life, your memory, your sense of your own past? Are you noticing this shift in how you experience time passing?
And maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. In a world where every year feels like it can be remixed, where our memories live more and more outside of us, on devices, what does it really mean to have lived a decade? Or even just a specific year? What does it mean when time doesn't seem to stack up anymore and every moment just feels like part of this eternal present?